Hi, I'm Ashley from Sunny Made, and today we are going to learn how to make 2 at a time half square triangles. To make 2 at a time half square triangles, you're going to need fabric. I'm going to use today 4 inches this of a colored and of a background. You're going to need a pencil, a rotary cutter, and a cutting mat, and something to trim them up. When we start with a 4-inch square, when we get done and we've trimmed it all up, we're going to end up with 2 3.5-inch half square triangles that are half one color and half of another. So I have with me today a 4.5-inch square ruler, which is what I actually started out using. And I also have with me the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmers that are in the half sizes, because these will end up at the 3.5-inch side. This is trimmer A if you're interested. Okay, so first we're gonna start with our fabric. We are going to take one of our colored fabrics with colored side up, or right side up, I should say. And then we are going to put our background fabric right on top. Now, depending on what color your background fabric is, or what color you're actually gonna be drawing on, you could use a pencil, or you might need a chalk pencil, which would be a white, which would be perfect on like a dark colored, like if I were to use maybe the back, if I wanted to draw on this darker color. So we're gonna put them right on top of each other, and then we're just gonna get our straight edge, and we're gonna go from corner to corner on just one part. At this point, you can pin it together. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Really, it just depends on if I have pins around or how big my squares are. So as you can see, I have a line connecting corner to corner. I've pinned it together. And now what I'm gonna do is take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to use a 1/4 inch and sew down one side and back up the other. So I'm gonna have one on each side. Now, after I've done that, this one I've actually already done so you could see it. See the line, and that I sewed down each side. Next, I'm going to take my straight edge ruler. It doesn't matter which one, as long as it goes straight. And we're gonna cut right down the line that we drew on the fabric. So at this point, we have 2 triangles. I'm gonna show you 2 different ways to trim them. The first way is if you have just a plain old square. So first we're gonna iron it. And in general, you tend to iron it towards the dark fabric. So the way to do that is you put the dark fabric on top, white fabric down on top of your ironing board. I always iron the seam first before I flip it open and iron it nice and flat. Now, depending on who you talk to, they have you iron it different ways. Some people like to iron them open. I think that takes a lot of time, especially when you're dealing with a 1/4 inch. But some fabrics, some patterns are better when you iron it open. Also, some people will tell you steam and no steam. Really, I just use steam on everything because it's a cotton. I want it nice and flat. So next, I want you to notice that my ruler here has a diagonal line. And so I'm gonna actually put that right over the top of the diagonal line. And that way it's going to have the diagonal line cutting it from one corner to the other perfectly square. I put it on there. We're gonna square these up to 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to, after I've lined up the diagonal line, I trim off one side and then the other. Flip it around, and then I'm gonna line it up at the 3.5 inch mark. So it's a perfect 3.5 inch square. Now when you turn it around, that diagonal line should also still be going from corner to corner. I'm gonna actually do a in-depth video on how to trim blocks when you're done sewing. So look for that in the future. So here's your one that is trimmed just with a nice square. Now this one is super cool, this clearly slotted perfect trimmer, because it trims all sides at the same time and it trims off your dog ears. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find my 3.5 inch line. I'm gonna stick it down on the line that I sewed, and I kind of like to do the darker side up on this because then I can see my sewing line better. You put it on top. You're just gonna trim up one corner, down the other, and then you go back and you trim off your dog ears. And now when you iron it, you don't have to trim it again. So we went from 2 squares of fabric and we have 2 half square triangles. Now go and try this yourself. Just for reference, so now you know what you're thinking, if you want your squares, your finished size, to be 3.5 inch like this, then you make your starting squares an extra 1/2 inch. Does that make sense? So that I wanted these 3.5 and I started with 4 inch squares. So if you want 2.5 inch when you're done, you want to start with 3 inch squares. Okay, go have fun. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section below.